Laura's use of eventually started to get under my skin. It wasn't the word itself, but the way she said it. In the beginning, it meant, we're working on it, but somewhere along the way, it shifted. Now, it felt like, don't ask. She stopped telling me things, and the things she didn't tell me, I noticed. At first, it was small stuff. Late showers, a strange laugh echoing from the other room, the way her phone was glued to her hand like it owed her money. I didn't snoop. I didn't have to. The distance was starting to stretch between us, and I felt it in the spaces where conversation used to be. She was quieter, more like she was moving around, trying not to wake something. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong, but I felt the shift. One morning, I asked if she was okay. She shrugged it off like it was nothing. Just tired, she said, and I took her at her word. But when she started using eventually more often, on everything really, I knew it wasn't just tiredness. It was something else, something I wasn't getting. Eventually, I stopped asking. Instead, I started wondering when I'd finally be able to say it out loud. I tried to fix it without bringing it up, thought I could bridge whatever gap was forming between us with enough small gestures. I brought home donuts on weekends, her favorite ones, the chocolate glazed with sprinkles. No reaction. I set up date nights, even made dinner once a week. Nothing fancy, just a few things to get her to sit at the table with me again. I'd leave notes like, dinner at 6 if you're around. She'd reply, eventually, like it meant something, like it was an answer when I knew it wasn't. She started staying gone longer too. First, it was friend time with someone from work. Then, nail appointments or book club. Every time she'd give me a half smile before she left, a quick kiss on the cheek, like nothing was different. But I saw it. It was different. She was moving farther away, leaving me behind in pieces. So one night, after she'd been gone late again, I asked straight up, "Are you seeing someone?" She laughed, a sharp, almost mocking laugh. "God, you're pathetic," she said. The word stung, but I didn't flinch. "I'm not seeing anyone." I believed her, but only because I had to. There was something else happening, though, something she wasn't saying. I could feel it in the way she moved around me like I wasn't even there, the way she'd turn her phone screen down when I walked into the room. That wasn't nothing. I tried patience, gave her space like I thought I should, moved my stuff into the spare room, a couch, my old amp, a shelf with tools I hadn't touched in months. I stopped asking where she was going, what time she'd be home. I paid my half of the rent, still washed the dishes after dinner, but it all felt like we were living separate lives. The more quiet I gave her, the more she used it to pull away. Like I was giving her permission to drift further. She'd close the door softly behind her, a quiet little signal that told me she wasn't coming back. Not really. And when I asked, she'd answer with, eventually. Always, eventually. I started to wonder if we were just stuck in some kind of loop, each of us too scared to break it. But maybe I was the one holding on to the idea of us. Maybe she wasn't holding anything anymore. I started shifting my stuff into the spare room. My old amp, a shelf of tools I hadn't touched in months, a few jackets I didn't need anymore. I didn't need to ask her for permission to take up space. It was just easier this way. I cooked for one now, always alone at the table, cutting my food into smaller pieces, waiting for something to change. But nothing did. I paid my half of the rent on time, same as always, same as if nothing was different, except it was. I stopped asking her what time she'd be home. I figured it didn't matter anymore, and it felt stupid to keep pretending like it did. I made changes that didn't matter to anyone else. Changed my HR contact to my mom. Updated my will, just in case. No drama. No big speech. I wasn't sure if I was being smart or just covering my ass, but I didn't care. I needed to have a plan, something concrete. One night, Laura came into the spare room while I was setting up a new shelf. She stood there, arms folded, staring at the boxes I was stacking. "Are we okay?" she asked, like the question was supposed to carry some weight. I set the box down and met her eyes. "We're not," I said, "and I'm giving you 30 days to figure out what you want." She rolled her eyes, the way she always did when she thought I was being dramatic. "That's ridiculous," she said. "We're just in a rough patch." I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. She already knew what I was thinking. "No," I said finally. "We're not in a rough patch. We're just done." Her face flushed red. She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. I'm done pretending we're fine. You've got 30 days to figure it out. After that, I'm done waiting." She shook her head, like I was the one being unreasonable, like I was the one making a big deal out of nothing. I didn't care anymore. I was tired of the quiet, tired of the way we had become strangers in the same house. The next week, Laura tried testing me. She came into the living room in that robe, the one she only wore on vacations, when everything felt like it was supposed to be perfect. The soft cotton, the faded pattern, like it was meant to remind me of something else, something we used to have. She didn't say anything, just walked around like it was no big deal. I didn't bite. I made my tea, did my laundry, kept everything steady. Like I was sticking to a script she didn't know about. I was done with games. She didn't like that. She tried pushing buttons, name-dropped some guy from work, some co-worker who really gets her. I nodded, didn't say anything. "That sounds great," I said, keeping my tone flat. "Glad you've got someone who listens." She gave me a look like I was the one being cold, but I wasn't going to play along. She hadn't earned it. Later that day, I went out hiking, alone, the way I had been for weeks now. She hadn't asked to come with me, and I wasn't going to ask her. I sent her a picture from the trail, the view down into the valley, the kind of thing I used to show her. Something small, but real. Her response was quick. "We should do that sometime." I replied, "We used to." She didn't answer that. I didn't expect her to. She wasn't listening, not really. One night, I came home to 2 glasses in the sink. One of them still had lipstick on it. The other wasn't mine. I didn't jump to conclusions, but it was hard not to notice. She came through the door about an hour later, smelling like perfume. It was the same scent she wore when we went out. But she hadn't gone out that night, and she hadn't told me anything about it. I watched her come in, trying to read the way she moved. She didn't make eye contact at first, like she was hoping I wouldn't notice. But I did. I always did. She shrugged like she was embarrassed, but not enough to own up to whatever it was she was hiding. "I had a drink with Jane," she said, not meeting my eyes. "2 drinks?" I asked. She paused, then gave a little laugh that didn't sound right. "I don't know. Maybe. I guess so." I didn't press it. Not yet. I had the 30 days. I didn't need to rush, but I knew. The clock was ticking. We went to a housewarming party for one of her coworkers. She acted like everything was fine, like we were just 2 people at a party, not 2 people barely hanging on. She even touched my arm in front of everyone, like it meant something, then let her hand fall away the moment I didn't react the way she expected. It was a performance, and I was done pretending I didn't see it. I watched her move through the crowd, talking to a guy she didn't introduce me to. He was leaning in too close, laughing too loudly at her jokes. The kind of thing you don't do unless you know the other person isn't paying attention. Her posture said everything I needed to know. She was still trying to pull away, but now she was doing it in front of people. I didn't confront her. Not here, not in front of them. I just grabbed a beer, leaned back against the kitchen counter, and zoned out to the game on TV. She came back over, said something about the snacks, about the music. It didn't matter. None of it did. When we left, she tried to pick a fight in the car. "You could at least act like you care," she said, staring out the window. Her voice was thin, like she was trying to drag me into something I didn't want. I looked over at her. "I care," I said, quiet but firm. "That's why I gave you a deadline." She scoffed, shaking her head. "God, you really think you can just control everything with a deadline?" I didn't flinch. "I'm not controlling anything. I'm just giving you a chance to make up your mind." She didn't say anything else for the rest of the ride. Her silence wasn't an apology, and I wasn't waiting for one. It was just the same quiet, the same unspoken distance we'd been living in for months. But it was my deadline now, and it was going to be up soon. One night, she tried to make dinner the first time in months. I don't know why it stood out. Maybe because it felt so out of place. She wasn't asking me to help, wasn't looking for my opinion. She was just in the kitchen, moving like she was trying to recreate something that had already fallen apart. We sat down at the table. It was supposed to be like old times, I guess. A meal, some conversation. She'd cooked chicken and vegetables, all neatly arranged, but we both barely touched it. "How was work?" she asked, like we were just 2 people catching up after a long day. I answered the way I would have with a coworker. "Fine, same old, same old." There was no real exchange, no emotion behind it, just the same mechanical back and forth, the kind of conversation we had been having for months. She didn't try to engage after that. Just picked at her food, poked at the chicken. Later, I went into the guest room and noticed the robe she'd left hanging on the back of the door, the one she used to wear on weekends. It looked out of place in that room, like a leftover from another time. She'd also left a sweater in my laundry basket. It was a soft old thing she wore when she was cold, when she wanted comfort. I didn't keep any of it. I folded the robe and sweater, walked back into our room, and put them both on her side of the room. No words. Just the exchange of things that didn't belong to me anymore. The next night, she walked into the guest room doorway while I was adjusting a picture on the wall. "You're being immature," she said, her tone sharp like she was accusing me of something. She stood there, arms crossed, like she was trying to make me feel small. I set the picture down, looked at her. Deadlines aren't immature, they're just real. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked away like she was looking for something to say that would make it okay. But she didn't find it. She just stood there in the doorway, watching me, waiting for a response. But I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for her. Not for the old version of us to come back. I had given her a deadline. It wasn't going to change. Her texts started to change. They got softer. "Miss you. Want to talk soon." At first I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She'd had plenty of time to figure it out. She'd had 30 days. She showed up at the warehouse after hours one night, dressed like she used to on our date nights. The red dress I bought her for our anniversary a couple years ago. She looked good, too good, like she thought this was still some game we were playing. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there in front of me, waiting. I wiped down a shelf, then met her eyes. "We can talk," I said, "after the 30 days. I didn't want to hear it, whatever she was about to say. I was done listening to excuses. I needed the time. She hesitated, then nodded. She didn't try to argue, didn't try to get me to change my mind. Not this time. I went back to the attorney I'd seen 2 weeks into all this. Picked up the final documents. Everything was in order. I knew what I was walking into. Day 30 came. She was in the kitchen when I got home. She was standing by the counter, chopping something with a dull knife, acting like it was just another Tuesday. Like we hadn't just spent a month barely speaking. Like everything was fine. I stood in the doorway, watching her. She didn't even look up. "Hey," I said. She looked over at me, just a flicker of recognition in her eyes, like she hadn't realized I was there until I spoke. "Hey," she replied, quiet. She put the knife down and wiped her hands on a dish towel. "I was thinking we could—" "No," I cut her off. "We're not going to do this today. Today's the deadline." She blinked, confused. "Deadline for what?" "For everything," I said. "For us?" She didn't say anything, just stood there, her hand still gripping the towel like she was holding on to something. I took a breath, kept my voice steady. "I gave you 30 days. That's what I've been waiting on." She just stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out what to say, trying to make sense of something she'd known was coming but hadn't believed would actually happen. But she didn't fight it. She didn't try to argue. Finally, she let out a long, slow breath. "So, this is it?" "This is it," I said, nodding. I didn't feel anything, not sadness, not relief, just a kind of finality. The choice had already been made. "You had your time?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Neither of us did. We stood there, each of us in our own silence, knowing what was already done. I laid the envelope on the table, flat and neat. 3 tabs, 1 signature. I didn't move it, didn't try to hand it to her. I just let it sit between us, right there, staring at both of us like the final word. She stood there, her eyes flicking from the envelope to my face, back to the envelope. I could see her trying to find some way out. She reached for it, then pulled her hand back like it burned. "I just need a little more time," she said, her voice shaky. I didn't argue. I didn't have to. "This is your time," I said, keeping it steady, keeping it simple. She swallowed, her lips pressed tight together. "You're really doing this?" I didn't flinch. "I did this when you stopped showing up." Her eyes flashed, like I'd hit something raw. But she didn't say anything to that. Instead, she reached for the envelope again, but I didn't let her get close. She took a step forward, eyes burning. "You're not even going to ask who he is." I let out a breath, slow and even. I don't need a name to know a pattern. Her hand dropped, but she didn't back off. She stood there for a second, just staring at me, like she was waiting for me to crack. But I didn't. I wasn't waiting for answers anymore. I'd seen enough. I'm not asking for anything, I said. You made your choice. This is the result. She looked down at the table, then back at me. You really think this is the answer? I didn't move, didn't blink. I think it's the only one left. She stood there, her lips trembling like she was fighting back something. Maybe anger, maybe regret, maybe both. But she didn't try to take the envelope, didn't try to stop me from going through with it. She didn't fight anymore, not with words at least. She took a step back, and I knew then that this was done. The pattern was set. The decisions had been made. She couldn't change it. Neither of us could. I moved out the next day, found a short-term lease near the river. It was clean and small, just a one-bedroom with a little kitchen and a view of the water that was almost peaceful, but not quite. The space was empty enough that it still felt like I could breathe again. No more pretending, no more waiting. Laura sent me paragraphs after I left, long, drawn-out messages about how marriages go through seasons, how we were just in a rough patch. She begged me to understand, to give us time. I replied once, maybe twice, just enough to let her know I wasn't changing my mind. We weren't in a season, we were in a stall. That was all I said. She didn't like it, but she didn't argue either. Then she tried guilt. She tried seduction. Texts like, I miss you, I want us to work this out. But it all felt too late, and each time, I just let it pass. I didn't respond, I didn't bite. A few days later, her family started reaching out. Her mom first, then her sister, asking me to reconsider, saying I wasn't giving her a fair chance. I kept my answers brief, honest. I told them I wasn't mad, just done. Told them I'd tried. They didn't like it, but I didn't care. One night, I was cleaning up after dinner, washing a few dishes, when her name flashed on my phone. I miss you, the text said. Can we talk soon? I set the phone down on the counter, finished scraping the last bit of food from my plate. It didn't sting anymore, not the way it used to. The words didn't matter. I let the silence sit there, took my time rinsing the dishes and putting them away, not rushing to answer, because I already knew what I'd say. But I didn't need to say anything. The space between us had already spoken for me. It was over. I was done, and I wasn't going back. The phone buzzed again, but I didn't pick it up. I finished drying the last dish and set the towel down. The house was quiet, but this time, it wasn't the kind of quiet that suffocated. It was the kind of quiet that made room for everything else to come next. We finalized everything at the lawyer's office. She showed up, quiet. She didn't fight the terms, didn't try to argue about anything. Her eyes were empty, like she'd already given up on convincing me to change my mind. I signed the papers, and that was that. I went back to the house afterward to pick up a few last things. The things I hadn't wanted to take before. A box of old books, a couple framed pictures, the last of my clothes. I took my time, careful not to rush, but when I was done, I left the key on the kitchen table, right where we used to sit and eat. The apartment I moved into had better sunlight. It felt like a fresh start. I set up the guest room desk, gave it a real job again. I even hung a few of the pictures I'd left behind. There was something about being able to make the space mine again, something that had been missing for so long. When people asked what happened, I told them the truth, as simply as I could. We stopped living in eventually. It wasn't an easy answer, but it was the right one. It was the only one I had. A few weeks later, I saw a couple at a cafe, having the same kind of argument Laura and I used to. The same cold tension between them, the same words said without meaning. I couldn't help it. I leaned over to the person next to me and said, "Respect has a deadline." I didn't feel angry when I said it. Not anymore. I wasn't mad, I wasn't broken, I was free. And I live in now.